Annyeong, it's Mikey here. Guys, thank you so much for all of your support. I can't believe we surpassed 5,000 and this channel is still growing. And it's all thanks to you guys, and I can't believe how far it's come actually. It's kind of crazy. Now, today I want to thank Eweadn because they actually sent me out their newest S9 Ultra gaming mouse. Now, this is supposed to be your budget Razer Viper Pro 3. So let's go straight into the unboxing and take a look at this board. But please make sure to like and subscribe. So we did a unboxing and taking a look at this mouse from Eweadn, the S9 Ultra, which really with this red looks almost identical to the Razer Viper Pro 3. Now, in terms of the mouse itself, it is quite light. I was actually quite surprised with the size of the mouse and putting it in my hands. I thought it was gonna be a lot heavier, which is like my initial thoughts of looking at the mouse, but holding onto it feels much lighter than what is perceived. And the build quality, I'm gonna be honest, in terms of like the plastic build and everything, it's not like your super high quality type of mouse. I always honestly thought like it felt a little bit cheaper than say like my Logitech, for example, the G703. Like this definitely felt a lot cheaper in terms of the quality. Now, does it mean it's a bad quality? No, it's just it does feel cheaper. Say, I don't have a Razer Viper 3 Pro. I wish I did. I wish I could afford to get one, but most likely, it's gonna feel definitely cheaper for this the Eweadn S9 Ultra in terms of like the build quality and the feel of the mouse than say other mouse out there. So keep that in mind for yourselves. The sound wise in the mouse, it sounded completely fine. It's not too loud either, the clicks, and the mouse wheel is incredibly smooth. So let's go into looking at the software and of course gameplay and other things, and let me give you an idea of what this mouse feels like.
So let's go right into the website. This is the Eweadn S9 gaming mouse. 3 versions: S9, S9 Pro, S9 Ultra. Now let me get this in USD because right now it is in Canadian, and it is $34 for the S9, $45 for the S9 Pro, and then as you can see here, about $65 for the S9 Ultra. Now, just as I said earlier, this mouse is a quite like identical version of the Razer Viper 3 Pro. Now, to be fair, this is the Canadian pricing with $260, so you're still looking at $137 USD for like the regular black one, and then for their special red edition, you're gonna be looking at about $180 USD. Now, this is the Eweadn, so it comes with the PAW 3950 Ultra, also the PixArt sensor, and it all comes with 8K, comes with the tri-mode. This is what it looks like when it's exploded, right? compared to the Razer, which is going to be 54 grams, so about 10 grams lighter, this mouse is still pretty dang light. Now, Kale White Blade switches for the mouse clickers, really great, right? This mouse is actually quite impressive. It does have a 500 milliamp hour battery, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, the battery life on this mouse from my use of it was about 5 days, like 4 to 5 days total, and that's running it at 4K mostly. So I'm gonna be honest, the battery life compared to say the Razer Viper 3 Pro is not gonna be as good. Now, of course, I'm gonna show you guys where to find the software. So you just go into there. You can click on which ones. Their S9 driver and S9 Pro. There's separate drivers there, so just download the correct one for you. And then this is what the software looks like. It's very simple. I'm gonna be honest. If you were to compare this to say Razer software, which has a lot more availability for customization and such, this is gonna be a very bare minimum software. Like it's very, very bare minimum. You can still make certain customizations to the buttons, and you can have the DPI section, which allows you to have 6 different DPI, which you can choose differently. There's a button on the bottom of the mouse that you can choose the DPI with. You have the different choices: 125, 250, 500, 1000, 2000, 4000, 8000 hertz. Now, I run my mice at 600 DPI, and this is because I saw Linus's tests with mice wirelessly that 600 DPI was actually the best for latency wise, so that's what I run. Now, as you can see here, you can also configure the mouse a little bit more: movement speed, scroll speed, double click speed. Like, they give you quite a bit of information as well on the things. So you see the question marks there? It actually gives you a lot more information. So you can actually go through it, read it, and know which settings that you want to set for yourself. Now, I was running on gaming, so that's probably why the battery life died a little bit faster. For yourself, keep that in mind if you like playing video games, because I'm gonna be honest, you're gonna have to charge it for probably about every 5 days. If you're running at 8K, I'm imagining that you're gonna have to charge it about every 3 to 4 days. So keep that in mind for yourself. But it didn't take too long to charge, so that's something that I was quite enjoying of the mouse. That just plug it in overnight. If you have a USB 3.0 on a computer, sometimes it will allow you to keep charging when the computer's turned off. Now, I'm going to show you guys what I did with aim labs. This is where I like to test mice a lot, specifically because it allows me to try different like flicking, clicking, and tracking. So this is going to be the flicking test. Now, one thing I felt with this mouse in terms of the flicking is, I think due to the size of the mouse itself and the way that, of course, I'm recording, so I'm very limited in terms of the space that I'm going to have to use for, my mice around. It is a bit difficult to keep the tracking quite accurate. That's something I completely felt with it. Like, I was slightly off each time, and I felt like instead of using my whole arm, when it comes to these tests, I'm actually using more of my wrist, which is probably a bad idea. I think just trying to keep myself within the frame is gonna be what's limiting me the most. So this is something that is a little bit more difficult, and of course, if you are using your wrists, it's gonna hurt a lot more. That's something for myself. I used to have tendonitis, and due to that, using my wrists too much is really not good for me. And as you can see here, there's certain points where I had to just stop for a moment because, I just couldn't get myself to flick in the right direction. Like, it was constantly off a little bit, and honestly, it's not a bad mouse for sure, but I did find the accuracy, and as you can see, the score-wise, right? My high score was 64,000, and this one was 52. It was a little bit more difficult. Now, I accidentally went to the wrong testing here, but you see here how I'm using my hands, and I was stretching my hands a little bit. It felt tight, and because of that, like, I was having a little bit of wrist pain, so I had to just stretch it out a little bit. This is mostly due to the fact that the mouse for me is quite big. I felt like, compared to the mouse that I've been using daily, which is the Chilkey Glacier, this mouse for me was a little bit on the large side, and I couldn't use my normal comfortable grip. I actually had to use more of a palm grip. Now, this is more of a mouse that I'd say is for medium-sized hands than, smaller hands, or if you have larger hands, it could work if you are someone who likes to do more of a claw grip or a fingertip grip. If you're looking to do just like a palm grip, you're most likely going to be, having your fingers go across, like past the front of the mouse. Now, in terms of tracking though, I did find that the mouse is actually quite, good for this, where say when I was doing the flicking, it was a bit more harder. Tracking wise, this felt actually pretty comfortable. I didn't have to, completely like tense up and try to keep myself like fully on there properly, and really trying to make micro adjustments. It was actually pretty comfortable, I would say. In terms of the accuracy wise, this was much better than what my normal scores are, and this actually hit the my highest score. So tracking wise, this mouse was really good, and I was quite surprised. I should say it was much more comfortable for tracking than say other mice that I've tried so far, which is quite impressive. Now I want to go into showing you guys a little bit of like the Glacier. And what I mean is, like, as you can see here, how I'm holding in my hands, it just feels a lot more comfortable. And because of the size of the mouse, it's just a bit easier for me because I do a weird hybrid grip. But let me show you guys a bit of Apex. So the reason why I like to go into the Apex training grounds when I'm actually testing out mice and showing you guys is there's certain things in a mice that I personally look for when it comes to Apex. And one of the things is really important for me is the scroll wheel. Now, in terms of like moving and how easy it is to slide the mouse, it's not as important for me, like crazy important, because in terms of Apex, like recoil control is actually not super difficult, and there's ways to go around recoil control. But in terms of the scroll wheel, it's actually quite important, and the reason for that is you're doing tap strafing, which a scroll wheel is super important. There's certain movement tricks that is like a good scroll wheel, a smooth or like one that is really responsive and easy to use is important. And as you can see here, this is one of them. This is going to be like super jumping with the rope or doing rope tricks and trying to make sure I can do it 3 times. Now, as you can see here, I was having a little bit of a rough time. The scroll wheel on the Eweadn is actually really smooth. Now, the Glacier that I use daily, the scroll wheel is actually a lot more rough and rigid, but the Eweadn's is actually quite smooth. The thing is, though, I still felt like the scroll wheel wasn't perfect in terms of what I was trying to do. You see me pull it off there for a moment there, trying to get 3, but it just felt like the reaction time for the scroll wheel itself wasn't amazing. And that's something that I personally felt for this mouse. To be fair, the Glacier is a rigid scroll wheel, and I've gotten used to it though, but definitely something that I felt for the Eweadn S9. Now, as you can see, as I move around, the thing that is like also bunny hopping, right, is important for using a scroll wheel, because you're going to be constantly using the scroll wheel to do bunny hops. And it was actually pretty good, but definitely a little bit, what I felt was the reaction time is kind of slowish. And as you can see here, these are one of the things that I do, is just tap strafing. And tap strafing, of course, again, is important to have a good scroll wheel. One of my friends actually had a mouse that the scroll wheel was really not great, and due to that, they actually weren't able to do tap strafe properly, and it was just due to the fact that the scroll wheel actually hurt their fingers and they couldn't move it enough because it was just too rigid and not moving too much. So this is something that I feel like for Apex Legends specifically, the scroll wheel is super useful. Now, this is also called a super jump, and you use a rope to do this, and it requires a good perfect timing with like your scroll wheel and your jump. And as you can see here, I was struggling quite a bit. It was working, but it was a little bit of a struggle for me in terms of using this mouse to do so. So something to keep in mind for yourselves if you really are using the scroll wheel a lot and you feel like in game specifically, like there's specific things you need to do with it, this scroll wheel and this mouse was a little bit more on the difficult side for things. Now, here I'm just showing a little bit of recoil control with the mouse, and this is going to be the jitter aiming, and jitter aiming actually counteracts recoil. Surprisingly enough, with this mouse, jitter aiming was actually not difficult. One thing I felt was, as you can see here, that's like how I'm jittering, and I actually felt that jitter aiming was not super difficult with this mouse. It didn't require me to actually use as much force in my forearms to do so, which was quite interesting actually to see. Now, as you can see here, for recoil control, it's actually not bad, making the small micro adjustments to get my aim in the right spot. And the R99 in Apex Legends is actually the gun with the most amount of recoil. Decent, not actually hard to do so. And of course, another thing I do here is going to be the flicking. One thing I noticed in Apex though is my flicks were actually a little bit more accurate. I was able to keep my flicking quite to the target that I needed to, which was quite surprising because when it came to aim labs, it was actually much more difficult with the flicking. But in here, definitely didn't have an issue. And I think it's just also due to the specific sensitivity I use in Apex Legends. But as you can see here now, I'm missing, so I'm starting to get off target. But definitely something that's interesting to see. And this mouse is great in terms of it. Like, it's not a horrible mouse. I think that they did a great job, especially if you consider the price. One thing though is my hands did get hot using the mouse, so it does get a bit sweaty. Now, this is the Glacier 8K. This is the mouse that I was using daily for, games. Sometimes I switch this around with the Echo Pulse 01 as well. I really like the Pulse 01 as well because of the battery life, and it is a bit on the heavy side, but definitely a good mouse you can also take a look at. As you can see here, this is a mouse with a more rigid scroll wheel, but I was still able to do the things that I was looking for. Still a bit more of a difficulty because, again, it has a rigid scroll wheel. But as you can see, for a mouse with this rigid scroll wheel, I could still do it compared to, say, with the Eweadn, which had a much more softer and like smoother scroll wheel. The chill keys, you can see right there, like I even did like a hyper jump there. And yeah, so it's something that's interesting to see when it comes to a scroll wheel that's a little bit more sensitive and quicker to do like reaction wise. So definitely something interesting and something cool to see. But let me show you guys some gameplay footage so that you can see like what I felt in game. So this is one game. I did multiple games, but I don't want to give you guys too much into this video because it's already a long video. But as soon as I landed, there's a team that landed with us, so quickly I'm looting up, moving around, and taking a look around. Now, of course, in terms of gaming, right, you don't just use one specific equipment. It's not just like, oh, I have an amazing gaming mouse and that's it. Of course, it comes with keyboards as well, so it's like a combination of the such. But one thing I felt in terms of aiming and looking around, this mouse was really smooth. It wasn't too heavy either, so I didn't feel that weight for sure. And as you can see here, like the aim wise for this mouse, I had no scope, so I'm just no scoping it and hopefully aiming in the right direction. That's something that I definitely was trying to make sure I was doing. But as you can see here, like right there, I was trying to throw away an item, missed, but you saw that shot right there. Reaction times and like there's no latency with it, which is great. So as soon as I saw that target and shot at it, it was perfect for the click, and then I got them to go down. So the aim wise and using this mouse was actually really nice in terms of gaming. To be fair, I know that my rank shows diamond, but I'm gonna be honest, my skill set is probably not really a diamond level skill. But here I'm going after the guys that drop down to try to res, and aim right there was okay. To be fair, my aim wasn't perfect, but using this mouse, it did feel really good. Again, I felt like there's points where I was slightly off, but in games, no issues at all. Didn't have any issues with latency either. And I didn't have any like weird glitches with the mouse where DPI and everything was going crazy. Now, these are the different mice that I've tried, and I've also tried other different mice out there. Was like the Pulsar, I've tried the Rapu. I've also used to have a Death Adder. Now, comparing these mice that I still have here, the originals that I used to have, that I tried mostly and was my main, was the VGN Dragonfly. This is the Eweadn S9 Ultra, and as you can see here, the design of the mouse again is just almost like a replica of the Viper V3 Pro, and it is quite smooth. So the whole mouse itself has a smoothness to it. It is kind of slippery in a way. So if you do get sweaty palms, actually if you have sweaty palms, you probably won't slip off the mouse, but something just to keep in mind that it does kind of get warm using the mouse. Now, as you can see, the measurement wise, this is 114.4 millimeters, and that's the length from the top of the mouse to the bottom. Sorry, it's from the middle, it's going to be 116. And then looking at the Eweadn right there, we're looking at 123.7. So we're looking at at least a 7 millimeter distance. Now this is the Pulse 01, which is 122, so it's slightly shorter than the Eweadn. And then that's my VGN, which is 121. And then this is the Logitech G703, which goes to 122.5. So the Eweadn is the longest out of all of these mice. Now in terms of the top to the bottom height, it's 38.6 millimeters. And that's going to be from like all the way to the top to the bottom. So the height of the mouse, and this is 38.4, which is the Glacier 8K. The Aqua Pulse 01 was looking at 39. So the Eweadn's is not actually super high in terms of the top to bottom height of the mouse. Right, the VGN is 37, and then this is the Logitech G703, which is sitting at 42.3. So the Logitech is actually quite of a high mouse. Now, in terms of that, even though it's supposed to be around the same height as the Glacier, it does feel a bit long. Now, I want to go into the sliding test, which is going to be the G73. I found is super, super glidey. Like it glides really, really well. The VGN does glide, but you can feel the friction when you are pushing it. The top part where the clicks are is definitely a lot more slippery and glidey, but the back is actually quite friction. Has a lot of friction. Now the Aqua Pulse 01 is kind of the same situation. You do feel the friction from it. The top end does have a little bit more of a glide, and then the back end actually has a lot more friction and grip. The Glacier is similar as well. These can see there how while I'm pushing it, and I have to put a little bit more strength into it because the top side is definitely a little more glidey, and the back side has a little friction. But in total, these mics had a lot more friction. Now this is the Eweadn S9 Ultra, which again also has that slight friction to it. Definitely not as glidey as the Logitech, which just like super light push and it just slides. So if you are someone who likes a mice that slides a lot, definitely this isn't going to be something you're looking at. Like the M-Tros, for example, has the fiberglass, which just glides super, super easily. Now looking at the profile in terms of grip wise, this is really a palm grip type mouse, especially for those that have a smaller hand. As you can see here with the Glacier, see how I can actually have some space between my fingers and the top of the mouse? That is normal grip that I personally prefer in terms of comfort. I'm not a big, huge, just full on palm grip, but the Eweadn S9, I couldn't do that. Right, the Eweadn S9, as you can see, is just like a full-on palm for me. And so if you are someone with a smaller hand, keep that in mind that it is a longer mouse, meaning you are looking more at a palm grip. This is the Pulse 01, which is similar, a little bit shorter than the Eweadn. So you see how I have a little bit more of an arch in terms of my finger. I personally prefer that. I actually really like it when I have a little bit of an arch over my fingers, and that's most comfortable for me. So keep that in mind for yourselves again. If you have a smaller hand, you're not going to be as comfortable with the Eweadn. If you have a mid-size hand, definitely a little bit better. And if you have like a large hand, it might actually be comfortable for you. And as you can see here, this is the 703, and the 703 has too much height and it's a little bit too wide for me, which is why I personally didn't really enjoy using the Logitech, but at that same time I couldn't really afford getting different gaming mice. So something that I definitely felt for this S9. And let me give you guys a little bit of a look even in the measure of my hand. So going back to look at this mouse, let me give you guys a little bit of a measurement in terms of my hand. Now, as you can see from my fingers to like all to the bottom of my palm is about 92.1 millimeters. So the thing I felt was if you can measure it yourself, just keep that in mind, right? The measurement of my hand compared to your hand and how I felt with this mouse. I definitely have smaller hands, and I feel that for me, this mouse is a bit large. To be fair, because of the lightness, it does feel okay. And if you are a palm grip type person with similar size hands as mine, you will feel that it is comfortable. It is quite shocking to see that the Eweadn S9 Ultra is actually quite light, and it feels light even though the mouse itself looks like it could be heavy. The pricing of this, honestly, I think is really amazing considering the specs that it provides, right? $65 USD for the Ultra is quite impressive, right? The Glacier 8K was like 80, so was the Pulse 01, and this one is coming out cheaper. Now, I would say if you are someone looking for a palm grip mouse and you want something a budget compared to the Viper V3 Pro, you should check this out.
Now, we did go through this whole thing. We compared it with, like, say, other mice I've tried and I've had. And I gotta admit, Eweadn did quite a great job, honestly. Considering the price that this mouse is at, it was really well done. The battery life is decent. It's not the most amazing. I mean, it's in the mid tier, I would say, compared to, say, the other mice that I've tried. The Akko is actually probably the longest battery life out of all of them. The Chilkey Glacier honestly is on the lower end side of the battery, and then Eweadn's like right in the middle. It's like about 4 or 5 days, as I was mentioning. The feel in the hands, again, it's going to be better for those that have a mid-size hand. if you have a larger hand, it's going to be maybe a bit small. If you have a small hand, it's going to feel large. And right in the middle is like where this mouse is going to stand. So I would honestly go take a look at it. Sorry, check it out or take a look at it, because the price wise, the 70 USD, it's actually quite an affordable mouse compared to say other mouse out there like the V3 Pro. So, and if you are looking at a V3 Pro and can't afford it or think it's way too expensive, this might be the best option for you, especially when it's pretty much a V3 Pro. So go take a look at it. I'll have the links in the description, and please go check out the other videos I got, and I'll catch you guys next time.